Okay, and we are rolling with Michael Kitces.
Hello, Chuck. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. And just to kind of frame this a little bit, why are we broadcasting live on a Sunday morning?
On a Sunday morning.
In Washington, D.C.
Because this is the CFP Connections conference. This is the grand convening of, I might even miss something. So what used to be the Academic Research Colloquium, which I came out to for years, that was like bringing all the researchers together with the cool stuff that they're working on. The registered program providers who all come together, like that run the, I don't even know how many it is, 200 plus CFP board registered programs that are out there. The Major Firm Summit, which is all the large firms, like the large enterprises now that increasingly are adopting CFP marks, but just different dynamics. So it's like, hey, we're thinking about bringing CFP to our 5,000 advisors. This is a little bit different than like, I'm Bob and my assistant, and I would like to get our CFP marks. Both very important, but just there's different dynamics. So CFP board, to their credit, long ago built out a team to support the major firms in particular and started convening them together. And so that's rolled together as well. And so now I think they've redubbed the whole thing Connections.
Yes.
Connections, because we're making all these connections between the academics and the registered programs and the major firms and other folks that come out. I'm also just seeing like my local friends, because I'm local to the DC area as well. So I'm also just seeing like my local FPA friends here as well.
It really is great. So I guess in the past, the CFP was doing this little conference and this one. Now they're putting it all together.
Right.
And this is a pretty major event going on here. It's at the Washington Hilton.
Yep.
And we're going to be covering this live all day today. So between your football and the CFP content, what more can you possibly ask for?
Oh, indeed. And we should be done by many of the football games. So
yes, indeed.
It's well timed.
At least for the second part of
yes.
this, without question. And we're starting off with the bang, as we like to do, with Michael Kitces. Yeah. And before I toss it over to you, one thing I have to note, and we should probably up our production value here a little bit and start doing like B-roll so they can see.
So you can see like this year. Yeah, like there's so much stuff happening like in a full 180 degree radius around us that of course no one can see from where we are. Like there's a bookstore over here where like all these books that have been written by advisor community. We've got like a giant registration area. There's balloons that are gold and black and white because those are the CFP board's colors. Like this is like CFP festive space, and there's a lot of gold. Because, of course, CFP continues to do their gold standard thing. So there's gold everywhere.
Don't forget
gold colors, not literally gold everywhere.
Indeed. Don't forget the DJ.
Yes, and the DJ that obviously Chuck kindly made special arrangements with so that we could have this conversation and not be DJ'd out on the audio.
But the music was pumping, and it will be again as soon as Michael and I wrap up here. But the one thing I have to note is how many young people are here. More than any. You go to a lot of conferences, way more than me. I don't think I've never been to a conference with this many next-gen advisors. Yeah,
there's only a few organizations out there I find that have, I think, really done a good job of trying to open their doors up to students. FPA Annual often has a strong student turnout. Schwab Impact, to their credit, often has a strong student turnout. But those are some of the only events that I really see that way. And to me, I mean, just CFP Board obviously has a special opportunity for it, not only because they're like setting the curriculum for all these students that they're coming in with, but this is the registered programs and academic research community as well. So like every student's professor is here, and I think just a lot of these professors brought their students along to get to see more of the profession, which is awesome to see.
Love to see it. So this is probably a really good segue into what we're going to talk about before you go on to the main stage, which is, let's put it as a question. Does obtaining the CFP designation give me a better chance for higher compensation?
So we do a lot of research around this. We do a lot of research on the Kitces platform overall around trends in the advisor space. We do studies on advisor productivity, advisor marketing, advisor technology, and advisor well-being, kind of a four study series that we rotate through. And so we've actually done a lot on this in our productivity research around, at the end of the day, like, do advisors with CFP marks generate more revenue? Do advisors with CFP marks have higher productivity? Do advisors with CFP marks have greater take-home income? And the answer basically we're finding across the board, it's like yes to all of those. But with some interesting nuances that have come up. So we actually published an article out on this a couple of weeks ago where we did a deeper dive into this question of like, why are advisors with CFP marks seeming to out-earn the rest? Like, what's the difference? Where does it show up? Right? On the one hand, maybe it is more affluent clientele seek them out, and so they're getting bigger clients. Maybe it's that they're just sheerly more efficient. Like, they can handle more clients because they're fast at what they do because they just know a lot of stuff. Maybe it's just that firms just prefer them to hire CFPs, and like it's driven more by the firms and what the firms want to hire than it is clients and what the clients are seeking out. So we tried to break some of that apart, and what we found was, to some extent, it's a little bit of each. But the biggest driver that we found by far is it's firms seeking out CFP professionals. So one of the things that we did was we took all the advisors that we study and we segmented them out into the ones who are in a lead advisor position. So I'm responsible for business development in addition to serving my clients. And we separately looked at what we characterize as the service advisors, which is I'm fully responsible for these clients, but I didn't necessarily have to go get them. Right, more and more firms now, as they build out their marketing capabilities, are starting to kind of separate the function of sales and service. Historically, we all had to hunt our own clients and eat what we kill, but now increasingly there are jobs for advisors like, hey, we got a great marketing system, we got 100 clients, we need someone to give them amazing, awesome service, fantastic financial planning, and just make sure that they stay forever and feel well served. Like, you don't have to go get them, but you darn well better hold on to them.
I think that's an interesting point as well, because when we both got into the industry, it was a pure eat what you kill.
Oh, yeah, those jobs didn't exist back then.
No way. I mean, I can imagine going into a firm when I started 30 years ago, just give me a book of business and I'll just go ahead and run this for you.
Yeah.
It really wasn't there.
Yeah, that you would have gotten laughter, possibly of the not polite kind at that point.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're seeing so many of these young people as well, because there's an easier pathway, less resistance, where you could just know what you're doing, be competent, and go to work. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, historically, if you were great at providing financial planning advice and fantastic at relationships, and every client you worked with would never leave you, you had no job and you got kicked out of the industry 20 years ago, because if you couldn't get them, none of that mattered. I mean, like, literally, it doesn't matter how good your advice is if you can't get clients to give the advice to in the first place, right? We had sayings like that in the industry. And now that separation, that segmentation is starting to happen, where particularly some of the largest scaled firms are centralizing their marketing. They're actually taking away from the advisors, because a lot of us are not the best at it, or at some point it's just easier to let the advisors focus on the clients and centralize the marketing. And as they do, now you need to hire advisors that you can be really, really confident are actually going to hold on to these clients, right? It's so hard and expensive to get the clients. The last thing I want to do is get the clients handed off to an advisor and have the advisor drop the ball after the fact. And so what we found as we looked at this from our research is that when we look at advisors in business development positions, there was a small but not trivial sort of boost in the earnings of CFP professionals over non-CFP professionals. Think on the order of like $5,000 to $10,000 a year of additional annual comp on average that CFP professionals who had business development roles were earning over the rest. So relative to the cost of the classes and going through it, like, that's a pretty good ROI. You spend like $5,000 to $10,000 on CFP classes and exam prep and the rest, and then you get another $5,000 to $10,000 of income per year for life. Like, this still maths pretty well. But when we then went and looked at the service advisors and average earnings of service advisors, we found that by the time advisors get to 10 to 15 years of experience, like a very well-established service advisor, we were seeing income boosts of $50,000, $75,000 per year of annual income that was higher for CFP professionals over NOD, which is, we kind of interpreted it. Look, from the business development end, there does seem to be some client preference for CFP professionals. We could see it in higher earnings of business development CFPs over non-business development CFPs, and we've seen it separately in some of our advisor marketing studies as well, that the CFP professionals just seem to acquire clients a little bit faster and more cost effectively than non-CFPs. Sort of implication is consumers are seeking it out to some extent and have a preference for it. But this literally 10x difference in the additional earnings for service advisors with CFP marks over NOD, which seems, simply put, to come down to, if I'm an advisory firm and I've got a great marketing machine and I can bring in dozens or hundreds or thousands of clients, I'm handing them off to a CFP, period. Like, I don't want to hand them off to a non-CFP. And I think part of that is realistically just like literally the knowledge you learn. Like, I want to hand the clients off to someone knowledgeable. But there are all sorts of interesting signaling effects that come from completing the CFP marks as well, right? If you've gone through the CFP marks, you signal a commitment to financial planning and a desire to actually do planning work. You were able to pass the exam, so right or wrong, like I've got some kind of general evaluation of how much you really actually learned the material because I can just see whether you passed the exam or not. And right from a hiring end, I can train a whole bunch of people and see who learns financial planning pretty well, or I can just look at who's got the CFP marks and say, oh, that means kind of CFP registered program, educational element, and the exam has kind of pre-vetted them for me. That's worth a lot to me as a firm, as a hiring manager. And from what we're seeing the data, that's worth a lot to firms as a hiring manager.
Evidently, and that's music to my ears. I'm a CFP myself, and I think creating that pathway for these young people to get into the business, and I also think that bifurcation of sales from service makes a ton of sense. Because in my opinion, generally someone is really good at sales or really good at service. I don't see too many people that are really good at both.
Yes, right. I mean, and again, oversimplifying a little, the people who are really good at sales get really energized by finding the next sale, the next opportunity, right? Like the next mountain to conquer, which means hanging out with your existing 117 clients kind of gets a little boring at some point, right? It's I want to go get new ones. I already got these. It's just really not as fun. It's not as psychically fulfilling for me as it is to go get the new ones. And conversely, people that are heavy on the service end are like, can I just give them service? I don't enjoy going out and the stress of sales and trying to convince them to work with me and all the other stuff. Can I just work with people who want to work with me and do a good job for them and get paid for that? And to be fair, there are some compensation differences. I mean, the other thing we found overarching all of this is the comp levels of the advisors who were in business development positions were materially higher than the comp levels of advisors who were in service positions that didn't have to find those clients. Yep. But we still see these service positions getting as high as $150,000 to $200,000 of annual compensation by the time they're 10 to 15 years out, which is a pretty darn good living. This. Okay, you might not make the $500,000 that some incredibly successful firm owner makes, with a 90% failure rate of all the people that didn't make it trying to build a firm that way, because it's really hard and the failure rate's really, really high. Whereas there's a lot of stability and consistency in service jobs and a steady service path to make a nice six-figure income that, frankly, by the time you get there, will probably start with a 2, not a 1, thanks to rising inflation. This is a really good career track that's emerging for advisors who are coming in today. And the ones who have some business development capability will probably end up being partner in that firm or hanging their own shingle someday, because there is still an additional economic reward for those who really can go find their own clients.
Absolutely. So that's probably a good way to kind of start wrapping it up, because I know that you're going to be pulled onto that main stage momentarily for your keynote address. So we really appreciate you taking this time. The one thing I just want to throw out there, because I'd be curious what the numbers look like. You mentioned the ROI. Mm-hmm. I'd be curious on the ROI of someone going the CFP route, making $150,000, maybe $200,000, versus someone going the medical route. All the money, all the time to become a doctor. And some of these doctors that are plugging into these practices, I'm not sure that they're breaking $200,000 that quickly.
Yeah, well, to be fair, it takes the advisors a number of years as well. Now, my gut, if you run the math, it frankly probably still does look better for the advisors, only because the doctors have, CFPs, while I'd love to see the educational standard lift further over time, we are about a half a dozen undergraduate level courses, right? That's kind of the core CFP curriculum. If I'm doing the doctor thing, I've got graduate school with a sizable six-figure debt potentially and 4 years out of the workforce. Then I got 4 more years of residency fellowship and the likes. I don't even get to start my career earnings until my early 30s, and I have to work off a sizable six-figure debt in many cases in order to get there, or at least I paid that much for medical school. And by that comparison, CFP path, okay, $5,000 to $10,000 for a registered program and an exam prep compared to $100,000 to $300,000 for a lot of medical schools.
Sure.
And I can get there in 18 to 36 months, not 8 years of education. So the sheer fact that we launch people so much faster, frankly, probably bodes well for the advisors. And yes, a lot of doctors, after that, they still have to get 10 more years in their career before income often gets significantly higher.
Yeah, so speaks pretty well for the CFP ROI for sure.
It really does. It really does.
So they are pulling you hard now to go on to that main stage.
Awesome. All right,
Michael Kitces, thank you so much for kicking us off for the CFP coverage, and we will be here for the rest of the day goRIA, fueled by Investment News. We'll see you in another hour or so. Thanks for joining us. And Michael, thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay.